Hallo und vielen Dank for this. Thank you very much for this introduction. We are Shlomi, Moto, Wagner, Johannes Müller, and Philine Rinnert. And before starting our little conversation, we would like to show you a short trailer and live performance here on that Zoom stage with Shlomi.
This is an instrument for measurement, satellite instrument for measurement the ground deformation. If the mass or if the magma rise, produce microgravimetric variation in gravimetric field.
Ich habe deinen Mund geliebt. Many the opera house I know is there. Ich habe ihn geküsst, deinen Mund. Es war ein bitterer Geschmack auf deinen Lippen.
So in step number 1, we basically have the HIV, the virus, that approaches the cell membrane of our human cell. And in step 2, we have the binding process taking place. These purple protrusions basically bind to the receptors, the protein receptors found on the cell membrane, and specifically they bind to the protein receptors called CD4 and CCR4.
Hat es nach Blut geschmeckt?
Bobby Campbell of San Francisco and Billy Walker of New York both suffer from a mysterious newly discovered disease which affects mostly homosexual men, but has also been found in heterosexual men and women. The condition severely weakens the body's ability to fight disease. Many victims get a rare form of cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Others get an infection known as pneumocystis pneumonia. Researchers know of 413 people who have contracted the condition in the past year. 1/3 have died and none have been cured.
Sie sagen, dass die Liebe
Live im Dreisatzstudio. August Everding hat sich mit einer der legendären Stimmen unseres Jahrhunderts verabredet. Der Capo Ljuba Vilic.
Salome hat nur zugeschaut. Sie will Johanna haben. Ja. Sie darf Johanna nicht berühren, was viele Salomes machen. Nein. Das ist falsch. Der hat so viel Strahlen, dass sie sofort zurück muss. Dann dein Haar will ich haben, das darf sie auch nicht berühren. Das ist auch wieder die Strahl. Und dann der Haut, das ist auch nicht möglich. Wo sie zum Schluss küsst den Mund, die küssen den Mund und in dem Moment, wo sie den Mund küssen, sind sie mit ihm in die Ewigkeit vereint. Ja. Die ist heilig, und die spürt nicht, wie die kommen und sie erschlagen und die fällt ganz sanft.
War das falsch? Ich habe jetzt eine Salome inszeniert und da habe ich am Schluss sie erstechen lassen von den Pagen.
Das ist falsch, Professor.
Ist das falsch? Das müssen wir uns hinterher darüber unterhalten.
Doch, das
warum
muss
das
falsch, weil sie muss mit den Schildern, damals hat sie
ja, Schilder zugedeckt.
erschlagen,
Erschlagen,
richtig,
ja.
und die spürt nicht, die fällt einfach so. Und mit ganz leichten Lächelns geht sie über.
Thank you, Shlomi, for this little lip sync, which we thought would be a nice way to start our little interview of each other. And we also thought it would be a nice contrast maybe to the film, which was streamed at 12, Nothing Will Be Archived, where you also were involved, Shlomi, and we all three work together. And it shows a little bit like a different side, I think, of our work, which is more this operatic dealing with opera and music theater in general, a little different from the silent movie we did. And since we are working together for so long, so actually Salome was the first production that we met Shlomi in and worked together with him. We thought it would be interesting for us, because if you work so much together, you don't talk a lot about the theoretical stuff, you know, if it's like all the time practical. So we thought it would be interesting if we think about like different questions and ask each other's questions. We don't really know what those questions will be, but we thought it would be interesting to get a little bit more theoretical. So maybe Shlomi, you want to start with the first question?
Yes. So yeah, thank you very much. It was such an amazing experience to do this lip sync because it binds together all these like different things that we've been doing together. And we met each other in 2016, around 2015 or 16, doing Salome. And you two have been working together actually already for maybe a decade before I met you, or 6-7 years or something. And I know a little bit about it, but I want to hear more about the kind of cultural influence and inspiration you grew up in, and what were the pieces or the artists that inspired you to do the work that you do. For me, it's something that is very unique, and it helped me also to understand so much of my own being and everything. But for you, where you came from, it was something that I would be really interested to know how, you came into this place of working with all this, like, with all these different mediums, the way you're doing the research. Who were the artists that were kind of like giving you the first lights or inspiration or things, motivation to do your work? Maybe Philine, you can start.
Yeah, I think I took a lot of my inspiration out of traveling and this exploring side, researching side. I think also when I was a student, or no, not a student, a child actually, I always wanted to go into archaeology or to really research, to, I don't know, I had the feeling then I could go on the field and search for something and dive into something. Actually, I always had it more like, I had more the wish to perhaps to escape, to leave or to explore something, to meet different people perhaps. And I don't know if I can really say there are like special artists I could name which are the inspiration for me. I think I of course I saw a lot of different artworks then during my studies which were probably inspirational, but also coming back to the Nothing Will Be Archived und oder Die Herren der Welt film, which we showed this morning. It's interesting to say that I was born in Berlin, actually close to the wall, the Berlin Wall, and my family was separate between the East and the West. And then when the wall came down, I was 9 or I was 10 perhaps, and I always took my bike and I was driving around these other parts of Berlin. And I realized, wow, this is like just a few kilometers away from my home, from my house. And it's so different. And I could feel that the ground had, there was so much happening before. And I think even then it started and it went on like my whole studies. And also when I left for other travels, that I realized, wow, it's so interesting just to study the ground and to take little relics and ruins which I find, and to think about what had happened before. And I think this whole film, Nothing Will Be Archived, oder Die Herren der Welt, was a similar experience, that we were researching in the surroundings of Berlin and feeling, wow, there was happening so much here. It was like the Second World War, but even before, of course, like this film Hollywood in Brandenburg, and you don't even know about it you don't know about it. I asked so many people here in Berlin, no one really knew that this was standing there before. So and we found it actually by chance. And I think this is a good example that I think my the way I work is always like going out, trying to experience something, to travel, to meet people, and then by chance also finding something and researching it, and then finding, oh wow, there's a deeper story behind it or behind this person, and then starting a work out of that. And actually a quite simple way of inspiration, I would say.
It's interesting because you said this when you talked about this, like your family was somehow divided east and west also. I just had to think about also my family, because if you look at the work we do together, there's also all this element of entertainment or pop culture also in it, like that the snippets or the artifacts we are using or working with are coming from very different directions. So we love opera, but it could also be like pop or old news or snippets from musicals that you would usually not put on a more experimental stage in New York. And with if you ask like this inspiration thing, it's also connected somehow to family, or like how your home was, what you also just talked about, Philine.
Yeah.
And in my family, it was quite a strange combination, because my father was very he was a teacher. He was coming from a not super rich but very settled family. So there was a lot of also art influences, or like a family who read books, for example, just put it simple. but my mother was coming from a real working class, you would say today maybe a little bit trashy background, who really had to struggle, and so they were very different people. And what my mother was always watching the cheap TV and loved also like trashy stuff on the TV, whereas my father was very like a little bit above this. And if I look at our projects, I really see somehow this mixture of high and low, without making any, what is Wertung, without saying one is good or one is, without devaluing one or devaluing the other. And also through my father, who was always running around schlepping us into churches and whatever, I always have this feeling that also this archaeological approach to our work, which Philine talked about, somehow maybe also, or am I interested in in ruins, or like in single stones and snippets, maybe somehow comes from that. I don't know.
Okay, then I have the next question for Shlomi. How did your decision to come to Germany influence your work, or perhaps even the relation to your voice? Because we were working with you most of the time with a lip sync, but actually you studied opera singing back into Israel.
Yes, exactly. So I moved to Germany in 2012. And that was just after I finished my time at the Israeli Opera at the Young Artists Program, where I was performing just traditional male roles as a baritone, from Papageno, Dandini, Figaro, and just very traditional normative roles. And at that time, kind of the same years, just before I moved to Berlin, and the first years in Berlin is when I discovered drag and the art of makeup, of gender performance, female impersonation, and that's something that changed my my whole psychic, I would even say, my whole relation to understanding my voice and the stories that I tell in opera and the roles that I portray on the stage. And aside, together with that, also coming to Berlin was kind of like a dream I had since my teenage years. As a teenager, I discovered Kurt Weill and Bertolt Brecht. I was in this youth movement. We had a delegation to Germany, and we met a group of the Falken, it's like a socialist youth movement. And I got into learning about the culture of Weimar and this all socialist past of Germany. And somehow I got really fascinated by that, and the theater and the musical theater that tells these kind of stories and portrays people in such a way that I didn't see in other places. So it's something that really fascinated me. And I knew that one day I want to come to Berlin to maybe study my master's or learn something, grow in a certain way. And then that happened in 2012, and was the first time I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And moving to Berlin, that's kind of like what happened. It was like a prophecy that became true, because I came with this traditional opera background, just started doing drag, and then discovering all the different stages in Berlin, the clubs and the cabaret and all different theaters, and then discovering you guys, the people actually do these kind of things where they can tell new stories and use, all these different things that are there as part of our culture and upbringing, but then actually tell real stories, have our own like life coming into stage. And for me, it changed my own relation to opera and to my voice. I don't have anymore to just tell this story of the traditional cis heteronormative culture and roles on stage. And suddenly there is a place also for queer narratives and queer heroes. And my own existence can be celebrated. And it's something that is not deleted on stage. And I always felt like on stage, I'm giving my whole life and soul to this opera singing, which is very hard and it's a lot of work. But I never tell my story. And it's not that it didn't even exist, it's that it was deleted. And moving to Berlin, it was just something that kind of like, still it was a lot of work, and it's hard also politically to find this place. And it's not like it's all rainbow and glitter curtains behind me all day long. But we create fantasies, so thank you for that. Yeah, so now I'm doing more opera that is that, and as we did Eight Follies, suddenly it's musical theater that is more yeah, our narratives, or vice versa also, we're singing that and bringing a whole different kind of like narrative into it, showing the complexity of this. Yeah.
Thank you. So the question for Johannes, what is it you are interested in music and the very different genres of music? Like we are really using like so many different styles, and I always have the feeling you especially know what to choose.
Let me think. First of all, I mean, I was growing up in Aachen, so which is quite a small town in the 90s. And so growing up as a gay teenager, maybe, music just played a big part of growing up somehow. I don't know how it was with you, Shlomi, growing up a queer person. So music was, for me, was quite was quite important, even as a somehow like, because I can't say that it was an easy teenage time for me. So I was slightly overweight, I was very gay and didn't knew it, and blah, blah, blah. So music was a lot of like consolation for me also. Like I really loved listening to it. And I don't know how was it with you, Shlomi? Did you also like imagine? I really was like, when I was listening to music, I was always imagining, even I was alone, but I was imagining like big production numbers happening, not with me in it, but I was more like directing them somehow in my head. And I mean, this music was very
amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I always had the role of the singer in my head because I was singing all the time. But
okay, yeah, I didn't, but I was like thinking about how I maybe would do it if it was on a stage somehow. So music was somehow like in one way, maybe something like a life, like a lifesaver also. And as I told, there was so much different music in our house that maybe this is why somehow in the end there was this hodgepodge mix of everything together. And what I really like about music, I have to say, in music theater is this somehow, of course, I mean the magic and the transformative element of it, and also, but also that it can be very intimate, or it can really touch you without saying a lot. I don't know how to say it better. It can. I'm recently thinking a lot about this while you hear about like those classic stages and opera houses and all those difficult Me Too discussions. I think that music can be very unlike in plays where you really have to play it, you have to be in the character, suddenly they are starting to touch. But if you have an opera duet, you don't have to touch somehow, no? It's like somehow it happens somehow in the music, which I find very interesting in opera. This moment of intimacy without being, I don't know, without having to cross borders performative wise. I don't know if you know what can see what I mean. Where I always think this is also like a very interesting side of opera that a lot of people are maybe not thinking about or not talking about.
So kind of music is a home also, no?
Yes, for me,
Like you feel at
definitely.
home, yes.
Yes, definitely. But I wanted to ask you, Philine, was theater a home for you, or is theater a home for you? Which is a little bit like the question, how do you see theater maybe when you were starting out, and how do you see it now?
I would say no. I mean, it depends what theater. Like the theater as an institution or as a like as a stage or something like that. I think like I always feel every time we have a project somewhere, I feel like excited. Oh my God, I have to assert myself, to like stand up and say who I am and to present myself. So I don't really feel at home. It's perhaps different when we are in stages we know, like Sophienseele or even at the Brut. Kira will be there after us. But I think perhaps it's more, I feel at home in the artistic process. I think for me, this is really my home, I would say. Like to work or to think about things, to work together with people. I think then this is really my home. And I think I was questioning this for myself, what is my home, kind of 20 years ago. And I thought, yeah, I can actually be everywhere and build the home around myself. I can sit in a hotel room and then do my drawings and whatever, or build my model, or read a book or listen to music, and then I can feel at home if I feel fine somehow and safe. And also this feeling like, feeling safe. I think it depends also a lot of the people to work with. So I think also this question of family, what we had before, even if you don't have like children or family, like personal family, then this becomes very important. So also this is kind of a home. So therefore you could say theater is a home, because for us being like freelance theater artists and not working always in the same house, theater is perhaps more like the vessel around it, and then of course the work is a home. But the I think it's not really like the theater system or and it's, I mean, the only thing perhaps what is interesting now in this whole pandemic time, I feel that I miss this ritual of going to theater, and this is also part of a home. So of course we can work, we can produce, we can meet online, but it's missing. Yeah.
I see, because I just, my feeling is more and more, when I started out, I was loving theater so much, and I really felt I loved going. I wanted to be there. I wanted to see different shows, and suddenly, I don't know, I start seeing things so very, somehow more critical as time goes by, or think I don't know, I question a lot more. So maybe this is the next question for Shlomi. Is opera, I wrote it down, a dysfunctional home for you?
Oh, wow. It's like growing up in an abusing family, huh? You always want the parents to really love you, and something is wrong. I don't know. I feel like it's as I said, I had this feeling that is I just give all my life and soul into a place that doesn't see me, where I'm transparent, and I always have to adjust myself to these standards. And in a very weird way also, it's not like the opera world never saw queer people, because there are a lot of queers working in the houses usually, and a lot of the artistic also impulse and influence, and opera in general is such an icon and an important culture in the gay culture, and something that's really inspires. It's larger than life, and I mean, it was a place for me where I can always also a refuge to and go away to this place where it's really magic. But then at the same time, I couldn't really find myself there, and I don't know. I see like in the recent years, there are a lot of changes, and a lot of the operas are trying to, a lot of the institutional operas are trying to make work that is more inclusive, where there is more diversity, where we can have our voices heard, but it's still very, very, very hard. And I'm just waiting for the day that there's going to be in the canon an opera where there is a queer hero, where there is someone who is celebrated. And today also, when there are some operas who deal with queer narratives or characters, there's still always, it's the same stories of loneliness, addiction, harm, pain, and so on, which is obviously also part of our experience as queer people. But where is the celebration of also just being who you are? And that's something I really miss there. So,
and I mean also like what somebody recently told me was, I never thought about it. That's not true, but it was a very interesting thought for me again to remember that the whole construction of the theater, the place itself, like how it's organized, is really like 200, 300 years old still. And the structures you have to work in are really, really, really old structures. So sometimes I feel like the structures are really more, are so far behind the people are much more advanced than those crazy structures. And this is sometimes why I feel like somehow also not at home in theater, where I think, okay, I just talking now from a director's point of view, if you want to be ahead of this whole machine and all those things you have to take care of and which doesn't work, and people who are underpaid and have bad mood and blah blah, just to go through this kind of thing as a director, you have to be a very special personality. And sometimes I think those personalities who are able to survive this, the whole system, like this way of working with so much pressure, aren't maybe, I don't want to stay in this like home analogy too much, but they are not the best mothers and dads. Probably, if you are able to survive this whole, I mean, no wonder everybody is like, and you hear so much. I mean, it's good that people start to talk about also this, like.
Yeah, I think perhaps they don't take it so personal, and perhaps that's also something we do. I mean, at the moment, we just speak about personal things even. So it means that for us, the work is very, very like personal and important thing from for our life, no? And I always have the feeling like also when we were working in Stuttgart now, the three together in the opera house, I had the feeling I have to serve the system, I have to serve the architecture, but it is more like a museum. And I like to go to museums. It's really nice, but it's not what we do. I think we are searching, I don't know, I think we are more interested in the process, in the process, which could still be changed in the time of production, not like fixing it in the beginning. And I think this is a very different way of working.
Okay, yeah, I feel like this thing really reminds me of this when you said the museum, Philine. It's really a sense that went with me for many years. I remember thinking of that, of like, we're just recreating this old, it's like liturgic scripture, that we go to this ritual space and we just repeat it and repeat it. And it has its beauty, and it's very emotional, and it's amazing. But I feel like mythologies is something we have to continue find ways to tell them in new ways, and write new mythologies. Otherwise, it just turns into a stone. It turns into something that is lifeless.
Yes, very heavy. And also, I think, I mean, community is changing, and there's so much happening. Like, the activist side or the political side, I think then the walls of these museums are quite fixed. You can't really I think you always have to break it down. You have to deconstruct it to really get to the point, even if the show isn't that good for that moment. But I think it's really important to also have this failure, or I think that's actually so interesting, because it's something I really love in theater, but sometimes it doesn't work. And I think this is also something which refers to the film we showed this morning, that somehow I always thought theater is such a temporary thing. You build up something just for a short moment, and then you can just turn it down, and then comes the next show. So it has from its idea, it's something so light and it's a communication. It should be a lot of communication, even with the audience. But so often it's not only theater, probably as well, arts or literature, it's getting so heavy, culture. And somehow I always thought also stage design, I liked it because I thought it's so, you can disturb it and then you can start again. So
that brings me to the next question. I'm gonna ask Johannes first. So this art that you're making, how does it meet your daily life now? So are you creating this work today as a contrast to what you see in the world, to the other cultural artifacts that you meet, or to just your personal experiences? It's escapism, or you're trying to change the world? Do you feel like you're changing the world with it? How does it meet your life today, your daily life?
Let me think. I mean, of course, it's also very subject related, or there's always a theme that each project has, which is, I think, usually something that interests us or me or whoever in the current moment. So of course it's related to reality. At the same time, I also, this is more like the question of casting also, is that I also would like that the projects we do somehow look also a little bit like the work, like the world around us. So there are very different people in it, and also people with different, not only cultural backgrounds, but also abilities, or dancers or singers or drag performers, I don't know, strippers, I don't know, who dramaturgs on stage, I don't. So and yeah, this is something I think we strive to do in our projects. This is also why I love the Salome thing so much, because we just said, okay, we are interested in working, and there were some moments of Salome also in your little lip sync. So we thought it would be interesting to do something about the way that singers act on stage, because it's a very special, grandiose way sometimes of acting, which I personally also love very much. And we thought to dive into it, it would be nice to work with drag performers, which is also the way we finally met you. And there were very different people on stage finally. And since I like to meet people and also talk to people, I must say I'd rather listen than talk myself. It's nice to meet different people in the projects, so we do.
Oh, I have a question for you, Shlomi, which is actually fitting to that. Lip sync. Since the Salome project, in all our collaborations, normally you are lip syncing like one part, and you're playing very different characters in a row. How would you describe your technique for that? It's really special to dive into these characters.
Yes, this is crazy. I never took any lip sync classes or anything like that, and maybe it's something that should be added to the curriculum of every school of life in general. Because so being a singer, one of the things that moves me and connected me to expressing myself in front of people on stage is connecting to my breath. And that's the first thing I do when I approach any lip sync project. So first, hearing where is the breath going, where is it coming from, and how the breath kind of like starts leading what is being said, and how it moves the body, how the body moves together with the breath. And there is something in the breath that can tell you so much about the person that is speaking, about their emotional state, their age, their the experiences they went through, or what they already experienced in their life or not, or how much pain did they have to go through, and that affects the whole voice. So the way someone controls his breath is basically tells so much about. Then comes the articulation and the vowels and all the other parts, and then the mask and the mimic. So there are so many levels, but just starting with the breath is already something that gives you so much information about, about this person that is saying something. So for me, it's first connecting to these sentences of breath. Where do you take the breath? Where do you release it? And how does it go? Is there maybe like crescendos in the breath, or in the way someone talks, or what are the dynamics? I mean, it's really easy also coming from drag. So I started doing lip syncing through drag, and it's really easy to go first to like the very grotesque place, and like grimace and just masks, and the clownish place. So it was something I was doing a lot in the beginning, more using like going to the clownish phase. But then little by little, doing more opera, because I wasn't lip syncing opera before I met you guys. For me, it was just something you sing. And when I lip sync, it was more to just connect to this, to a feminine voice that I didn't know how to express within myself, but I knew that I have in people, and I get a lot of reflection from that, from society. And I had also my own shame and fear of expressing it. So for me, lip syncing was connecting into those like characters and voices, and celebrating them and being powerful, almost like wearing someone's voice as an armor. And then also then came the makeup and the glitter, and it's something that brought me so much power. And also because you see how much it affects the audience and how much power it has. And then it made me realize, wow, this is actually nothing to be afraid of. It's something that is, it's a tool of change. It's really something, this is really a ritual space, turns to be. For me, drag performers it's like prophets. Like when I go to drag shows today, it's like listening to prophecies of people connecting to so many higher levels of being that our society nowadays just keeps silent, or deletes, or is transparent. So lip syncing for me is really a form of almost a religious, or this spiritual channeling of, yeah.
Yeah, we should all lip sync to come back together. Yeah. Like everybody's talking about this big divide everywhere. So this is also what I find really touching, because we are, this is now a totally different project, but we are currently editing this thing for the Opera House in Stuttgart, where you also lip sync. And it's so interesting to see that you really, it's not only the exactness of it, but also if you see the whole body, which we couldn't see now here, it's not only you are becoming the person, which is also interesting and fun to watch, but also this, you have the feeling that in a bodily way, you understand through this lip syncing, you understand the person somehow. I don't know how to say it. If one can see not only that you are that you become this person, but that you somehow
feel like this person.
Feel like this person, or understand the feeling, which is something I find quite interesting in really in those times.
Wow.
Today we should all start lip syncing.
Yeah, next time I lip sync you, Shlomi, and Shlomi me, and Johannes. No,
yeah,
no, but we should change.
I wanted to ask also one last, maybe, I don't know, last question. I don't know, because Philine, you talked about this, also the machine and the maybe also the architecture of those opera houses, and I realized that you are working a lot of with explosions, and I really wanted to ask you where this is coming from.
Oh,
which were also in the film, actually.
Yes, I wanted to answer like that. This title, "Nothing Will Be Archived," I think I wrote it in my, I mean, it's just the one part of the title. I wrote it down in my diary 10 years ago, and I think it was kind of an empowerment for myself. Because, yeah, I mean, I think this possibility of destruction, like, you can say we do it also in our pieces, that we have like always in the best moment we cut off and we jump to the next scene. And this moment of destruction, I think it's so important somehow to not have fear, or to have the possibility to start again. I think it can be very, very hurting, but I think it can also open up a lot of possibilities. So to this moment of starting again, like rising and disturbing. And so this is one part. And yeah, in the film, we just saw the ruins of this destruction. We didn't see the real destruction, but we imagined the destruction. We imagined like the times when it was disturbed. But I also think this, like the explosion or the mode of explosion is for me like a condensed theatrical moment. And I think like it's like a firework. And like being together like a group of people and experiencing an explosion, it's such a collective moment, which is like also going to opera and having like the high note of this singer. I don't know, it's not for me, but I think a lot of people experience it like this. For me, it would be more the explosion of something. And yeah, I'm really interested in this moment of this explosion because it needs a lot of preparation. It's a long process. There's a lot of fear before doing it. And then it's also a relief afterwards. And I think this is perhaps what is interesting for me in explosions.
And I mean, you wouldn't have all those artifacts to put again together, like make a new combination. You can only do somehow if you have you somehow have a big fat explosion.
Yes, actually, in the end of our film, we were like destroying the vases, or what is it in English? And I mean, you could say, okay, it took a while to make them, to produce them, but then I wouldn't miss this moment when you all were throwing them on the stone and they were exploding. It was really a great moment.
Okay. So maybe I have some explosions here. Maybe I can show them. Oh no, it doesn't work.
We don't see it, no. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Great, yeah. this is for the future.
It's like the confetti cannon that they always.
Yeah.
It's always explode at the end of the drag show.
So I have a last question. The final one. We have, I think, 1 minute more. Johannes, do you think there is there could be like a utopia in this whole opera business?
Yes. I mean, this comes maybe a little bit also about from our work we just did about voice in Stuttgart, where we dealt a lot with, because we thought it would be interesting to take a deeper look at what voice is in opera, because usually you go to the opera house and you think, oh, they are singing, ooh, boring, or or everybody expects like the people to sing. But I think to sing on stage, also live, is like a very radical thing. And what I really like about opera, that it has this, or music theater also, like this openness through the voice, that I feel like it's very accepting of very different people doing it, much more than straight plays with texts, for example, that somehow the role and the text in a play, like when it's spoken, is very tight. But I have the feeling in opera it can be very fluent who slips into those roles. So you can be thin, you can be very fat, you can be old, you can be young, as long as you can sing it, you can be it, which I find sometimes a very modern thing, which I sometimes also think that opera doesn't get enough recognition for, because it's always like hidden between those big fat layers of stage design and effects and orchestra and this whole machine, that you don't see this. So this would be like if I would have, this is something I think could be.
So somehow it's like not connected to a homeland anymore, or to like, it's a meeting point, no? It's like
yes.
It's a room for everyone to role play. Kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think an easier role play, or than in even in dance, where you always have to be fit. And I mean, you have to be fit in opera to sing, but you can be totally overweight and play, I don't know, Siegfried. If we're talking about homeland, you can be a black Siegfried, no problem at all. And even the audience are very accepting of it. I'm sure there will be 1 or 2 letters coming, but normally everybody, there's no question about it that you can have a black Siegfried or a black Carmen, for example, which I really like in opera.
I think we have to close.
Oh, yes.
I got a message.
Okay, I didn't.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, audience. I hope we see you soon live again. And then, yeah,
it was very interesting talking to you.
Yes.
Both.
Yes, with you too. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.